back with us, so we just need confirmation from IT that the live stream is back up and running. It's back on and ready to go. Thank you. I'll hand over to Councillor Clark as chair.
Thank you, Simon. If we got everybody back, or all 10 back, all 10 of us back?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Thank you. Item 3, Vice Chair. I'm going to step out of line after the nice words of Janet Frank, and I'd like to propose Janet Frank as the Vice Chair. Have I got a seconder?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Was that you, Keane?
Councillor Duncan, yeah.
All right. Sorry, Councillor Duncan. Are there any other nominations? On that basis, can we go down the, there's only the one nomination, but I think we still ought to vote on it. Can we go down through the officer, the members present, yay or nay or abstain, please?
Chair, just before we do that, can I just say that Councillor Burr has a hand raised? I'm not sure if that's to nominate somebody else. Can you just clarify that?
Yes, thank you very much. I was going to second Councillor Frank. I did have my hand up, but that's absolutely fine that Councillor Duncan second that. That's no problem. Thank you.
Can we go down the vote, please, then?
Councillor Andrews.
4.
Councillor Arnold.
4.
Councillor Burr.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Delaney.
4.
Councillor Dockra.
4.
Councillor Duncan.
4.
Councillor Frank.
4.
Councillor Graham.
4.
Councillor Ryedale.
4.
Thank you all. That's 10 votes for.
Thank you. Janet, you are unanimously elected as Vice Chair of Policy and Resources, subject to it going to full council. Or confirmation at full council, I believe is the phrase Simon used. As we've had 10 votes twice now, I take it apologies for absence, there are none. Has anybody, item 5, got any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chairman. It's Councillor Andrews. I have pecuniary interest in item 14. So I will be leaving the meeting, and if somebody could let me know when it starts again, I'll come back into the meeting after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.
Seems like that.
Any other declarations of interest?
Yes, my hand. Hello, my hand is up. I don't know if it can be seen, but my hand is up.
Lindsay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Item 9, Moulton and Norton Neighbourhood Plan. I have properties in the area. I have taken legal advice, and it's non-pecuniary, so I can vote and speak on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, anything to declare?
Chairman, I'd like to declare an interest. Item 10, I'm a member of North Yorkshire County Council. Personal interest.
Thank you, Keane.
Yes, Chairman. Sorry, could I just the same as Keane? Thank you.
I was waiting for the mirror image. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more declarations of interest?
Just one other quick thing, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming, given you're on your phone, you can't see people when they raise their hands.
No, and the
correct?
officers are going to inform me when they have an R.
Okay.
Hopefully with an attempt, and it can't when it's going second hand be as quite as quick as seeing it, but hopefully in the general order with which they've got up.
With that in mind, Chair, Councillor Paul Andrews, who's here as ward member for Moulton, has got his hand raised.
Paul? Paul Andrews? Hello? If Paul's speaking, I can't hear him.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Chair, I'm going to be asking you permission to speak on item 9. I've given notice of that, but in doing so, I have to declare an interest as I am a Moulton Town Council member. Thank you, Chair.
I'm quite happy for you to speak on item 9, and that brings me to something else that I was going to say before I started. I will not be strictly enforcing a 3-minute speaking time. However, if it is abused, then I may do. And I'm not equally going to stop somebody coming back for a second time, if they want to do, simply on the basis that things arise out of a debate. But please endeavour to get it to as near to the 3 minutes as possible and come back as rarely as possible. But I'm not going to be rigid on either of those two. Thank you, Paul, for raising that, and I look forward to hearing what you've got to say on item 9. Anything more for anybody more on members' declarations of interest?
There's no further raised hands, Chair.
No further raised hands. Thank you, Chris. So now move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February, page 15 to 14. Has anybody got anything they wish to raise on those minutes before I propose that we approve them?
Yes.
Councillor Graham has the hand raised, Chair.
So?
Yes, in preparing for this meeting tonight, I was looking back through minutes of the last meeting, and I'm referring here to minute number 36.
Page
10.
Page 10, yep, got it.
When there was a recorded vote, and the vote was a vote to freeze the council tax. And on that occasion, Councillor Burr, Councillor Frank and Councillor Ryedale all voted to freeze the council tax.
Yep.
So I thought, what's happened here? So I went to the council minutes and found that they'd done a remarkable about face. And I thought, is this a mistake? But quite frankly, after the cat that Janet Frank let out of the bag tonight, it clearly isn't a mistake. And if this is an example of cooperation, then I am absolutely shocked. And I hope that when Clark's coalition are running the show, they'll be able to think for themselves, but I doubt it. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for those kind words. I think if you look back at last year, you find a very similar group of people last year voted to increase the council tax by the same amount as this year. So maybe they haven't done a U-turn, maybe they're going round a roundabout. Last year they voted the same way as they had this year, but in between they were pointing in the other direction. But maybe the debate persuaded them. I have no idea. But it all makes for good democracy. And I certainly don't remember last year, when we increased the council tax by a penny a day per person, there was the fuss that there has been this year. In fact, there was absolute silence. And it was delivered by the controlling group last year perfectly happily. So I would suspect it will all sort out in the wash. Give it a little bit of time, Councillor Graham, and we'll see what happens. But thank you for raising the point. Anything further on the minutes?
Yes, just so, is Councillor Graham saying the minutes are wrong or the minutes are right?
No. I asked for comments on them if there were any.
Right.
She
Okay,
made a comment about people changing their minds, and I've endeavoured to explain that this is the second year running it's happened. I move that we adopt and approve the minutes. Have I got a seconder?
I'll second it, John.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anybody wishing to speak against approving the minutes, or can we do that on an affirmation basis? Because it does save time.
There's no raised hands, Chair.
Are we all happy with that? In which case, we'll approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Item 7, recommendation from the Grants Working Party held on the 8th of March 2021, pages 15 to 22. I believe congratulations are in order, Councillor, and benefit from your leadership and chairing.
Oh, thank you, John. That's very kind of you.
Have you anything to add to the minutes as they stand, or comments to make, or whatever?
Just look, are you on page 17?
We're on pages 15 to 22. I can go to page 17.
Where the grants awarded is, you'll see Huttonley Hole Bowling Club hasn't got any money.
Yes, that was a question I was going to ask you, and you're answering it before I've asked it. That is impressive.
Well, they asked for £1,900 and they asked for 100%, and we only give 25%. So they
as I know.
As you know, so they would only get 450. However, if they applied for £1,999, they could have the whole lot.
Correct.
So we sent it back and asked them to apply again. So they can get £999 instead of 450.
Yep, I think that is. I would have voted for that in the Working Party, and if that's what you decided, it makes sense to me.
That's what we did.
I had a question for you, Steve, in relation to these, and I don't know where it was, and I've read it, and finding papers these days is quite entertaining. Was there somebody wanting to put outdoor heating?
It was Sheriff Hutton. I think it was Sheriff Hutton Bowling Club. It was questioned, and it was sent back to them for future discussion, and they sent back and said they're going to purchase some big blankets and warm clothing so they could sit outside, and they would only use the heaters at a really, really last resort, and doubtful if they'll actually buy any.
I think they should be encouraged not to buy them at all. The temptation to switch them on is always there, isn't it?
We had some photographs of the stuff they're going to buy just so we could approve it. Not the heaters, the warm clothing and seats and things.
The blankets, etc.
Yeah.
Have you anything further to add, Steve?
No, that's fine. Thank you, John.
In which case, rattling of sheets of paper. Can I? Will you move, Steve, that we adopt the recommendations from the Grants Working Party?
I propose that we adopt the recommendations from the Grants Working Party.
And I will do what I've wanted to do for years, and that's second Councillor Arnold.
Wow. Is that a first? Thank you, John.
Is there anybody opposed to anything in that package? We've tidied up the heaters and we've tidied up the Huttonley Hole Bowls Club. Is there anything else that anybody else is concerned about?
Councillor Duncan would like to speak, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just simply to say that Councillor Delaney's been locked out of the meeting. He's hoping to try and get back in if someone could contact him. I don't think he'll be opposed to these recommendations, but he's not here, so he can't take part fully.
Can we leave it a minute just so that he can get back in again if possible? Because I don't know, and I suspect you don't know, whether Councillor Delaney's got some burning issue on the Grant Working Party. Better than that, can we come back to it? Because I think we're at a position that we would be saying, is there anybody wanting to speak against it?
I hope not.
No hands are raised, I hope. And if that's the case, we need to go to affirmation when Councillor Delaney's back, if he has nothing to raise. Can somebody pick that up in administrative terms for me, please?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Right, so item 7 is waiting to be voted on in terms. Urgent business. I have one item of urgent business, which I would have liked to have raised at the pre-meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago. And that is, I believe that we need to set up a cattle market working party. So I would like that to go on to the agenda, but I would also like any input that's required from the officers in relation to doing it, bearing in mind that this has been on the agenda with a little a for many years and really does need a move forward. So can the officers have a think about that before it comes up under item 17? And in fact, I would like to move item 17 and pop it in after item 12, so that when we go into exempt, the cattle market discussion, working party, whatever it comes out to be, is in the public domain and not into exempt or coming back from exempt, if everybody's happy with that move. Any hands up for objections?
Mr. Chairman, could I just say one thing, which is, I think in time that I've been on PNR, there's perhaps been only a handful of urgent items that have been raised, and they've all been genuinely urgent where they could not have been foreseen that item needing to be discussed as part of the agenda when it was issued. And as you have just said by your own admission, the issue of a livestock market has obviously been on members' radar and the council's radar for many years. And while I do understand your point that progress hasn't been made, and while I don't actually disagree with the establishment of a working party, what I would say to you is to be very careful as chairman of this committee to use that urgent business section for items that are genuinely not urgent and could not have been foreseen. And given that you have added an item under committee procedure. Can I come back, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, sure.
Just very briefly to say, I do not consider it to be a genuinely urgent item. Urgent business should not be abused. Whether you can have your items on the agenda or not in accordance with the Constitution, it shouldn't be used on items that could have been foreseen, and that could have been foreseen. Just because you have a group of two is not a reason why it should not be on the agenda. I'm happy if you want to proceed as chairman with declaring it as an urgent item. I'm happy for that to happen, and we will support, I would imagine, the establishment of a working party on the livestock market, but I do not believe it's genuinely urgent. But if you want to go down that track, we have no option but to go.
I'm saying that at the pre-meeting 3 weeks ago or whatever, it would have been on and it wouldn't have been an urgent item. It has become urgent because we couldn't put it on the agenda at that point. Thank you, Jane. Right.
Chair, Councillor Arnold would like to speak.
I've been waving my hand for quite a while.
I can't see you, Steve.
Well, I know you can't, but I sent a pigeon across. Did it not come?
You sent what?
A pigeon.
A pigeon? Yes, I've got the pigeon. I've eaten it.
Good. I have to 100% agree with you, John. I'm not sure about the emergency item, but
no, we dealt with that. Thanks.
I 100% agree with about the cattle market. I have spoken to Philip about this, and
Steve, we're coming up later on the agenda. Can we discuss it at that point?
I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Right. Anything else that anybody else wants as an urgent item tonight? Move on quickly, John. Part A items, matters to be dealt with under delegated powers or matters to be determined by committee. Moulton and Norton Neighbourhood Plan Consultation, page 23 to 40. And I believe Gary's there to introduce this. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you, Gary. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm aware that Councillor Andrews has asked to address the meeting, so I'll keep the presentation very brief. Obviously, you've got the officer reports on page 23 onwards, Chairman. In essence, this consultation by Moulton and Norton Town Council on their neighbourhood plan is in relation to a draft version of the plan, and that consultation period started on the 12th of February and runs until the 26th of March, Chairman. So it's a fairly limited window against which we can respond as a council if we wish to, and hence the report before you tonight to consider the contents of the plan and our response. In essence, as you'll see, it's the neighbourhood plan from both of the towns, and actually the work on the neighbourhood plan has actually been going on for quite a while, as you'll have seen from the report, but we've now got to the stage where we have a draft plan that's the subject of a consultation, and that will finish just before the end of this month, and the comments that are then made in relation to the town councils then are required to be taken into account before the town councils submit to us, the district council, what effectively is a final version of their plan to take forward through the proper formal examination process, a bit like we would do with our own sites documents or the local plan strategy, as we've previously done. In essence, there are some differences in that process compared with our own, although it does follow the basic examination process, and at some point the plan, when it's finally submitted, would then be examined probably by a planning inspector, but not necessarily so, who would then make their findings on the submitted plan. The main change, really, the main difference really in respect to the neighbourhood plan compared with any plan we ourselves would produce, is that this plan then is subject to a referendum at the end of the process. So having gone through all that process, then there is a vote, a local vote on whether the plan should formally be adopted, and that's where it differs from our own. Members will probably have picked up in section, I'll just get to the reports, Chairman, in section 7, that there is a financial implication, therefore, in relation to adopting this plan throughout the process, because we need to then cover the cost of the referendum at the end of the process. So that's something I wish to highlight for members' attention. As you'll have seen from the report and the Appendix 1, what we have are some key areas that the neighbourhood plan seeks to cover. The neighbourhood plan doesn't seek to make any land allocations as such. The town councils were happy back in 2016 to defer that to the sites document. So it doesn't propose any housing sites, for example, or things of that nature. In terms of the actual plan itself, which the link has provided in the agenda report, it's around about an 80-page document. It's quite a detailed document, and members who've had the chance to look at that will probably see that some of the elements of it are quite detailed. So the Appendix 1 does seek to summarise the various chapters and give a general overview in terms of what the officer view on the commentary on the consultation should be. So without going into it in much more detail than that, Chairman, time-wise, we're very much in the hands of the town councils as to how quickly this now proceeds, because from March, the town councils will be required to take into account the comments that are made, and then having taken those comments into account, submit to us whatever they want their final version of their plan to be. And at that point, then we start going through the process to do the formal examination, as I've mentioned. So the next steps section on the report, which is on page 30, is a sort of best guess, Chairman, in terms of the timescales for this. But we estimate the submission of the plan back to us by no later than September this year, and then examination hopefully before the end of the year, and then referendum by late summer, early autumn next year. And hopefully that gives members an idea of how quickly this might roll out, Chairman. I don't really want to go into any more detail, Chairman, but if members do have questions, I'll try and answer them.
Right. Have you any questions for Gary?
It's only Councillor Andrews with his hand raised, Chair, on Councillor Frank.
Can I come to you a little later, Paul, and just let the members of the committee have a bat first if they want?
Yes, Chair. My hand is up for the debate, not for questions.
Ah, right. Has anybody got any questions?
Councillor Frank, Chair.
Janet?
Yeah, it's just I don't quite understand on 7.1, Gary. The financial. I'm probably missing something, or I'm not quite sure how it adds up. But it says the cost will be approximately 25k. New business funding of 20k is available to local authorities to assist with these costs. Consequently, a further 15k will be required. If it's 25k and then 20k is available, why would they need another 15? Sorry, it's just I'm maybe not understanding the full.
Well, Chairman, these are estimates of costs, but if one took the examination cost of the inspector or whoever as being up to 10,000, and then the estimated cost of the referendum could be up to 25,000, then that gives a total of £35,000 worth of costs. The new burdens funding available is only 20,000. So if we had the total cost at the upper end of 35,000, then you might have a residual cost of a further 15,000. So you take the 20 off the 35.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
That's fine. Thanks, Gary.
Any other questions from the committee?
No, Chair.
I have one, Gary, and I like these phrases, and they're planners' phrases. This could go before a planning inspector, but not necessarily so. What happens if it doesn't go to a planning inspector?
Chairman, ordinarily a development plan document would have to be examined by a planning inspector, such as the strategy was in the science document. But for neighbourhood plans, that's not necessarily the case. There are individuals who are accredited to examine neighbourhood plans who aren't actually planning inspectors.
It would be an inspector, but not fully fledged, as it were, or they wouldn't like it to be described as that, but a person doing the job of an inspector, but not a fully fledged inspector.
That's correct, yes. And in essence, I mean, there's one or two. I mean, some neighbourhood plans vary wildly in their content. Some of them are quite, focused and almost at a village plan level. And I think we're aware of one or two of those smaller plans that have been examined by an academic in the field.
Yeah. Right. Paul. Thank you, Gary. Paul?
Yes, Chair. I'm a little concerned about this. Let me explain. Paragraph 6.4 says quite clearly that broadly speaking, the policies of the neighbourhood plan or draft neighbourhood plan are not in conflict with the strategic policies of the council. Beg your pardon, Chair.
Hang on a second, Paul. We seem to have a bit of external noise.
Hello, we are not available now. Please leave your message. Hello?
Have we got that under control, whatever it was? Right, carry on, Paul.
Councillor Andrews.
Hello?
We seem to have lost Councillor Andrews, Chair.
Can somebody remind me to come back?
Can you hear me now?
Go on, Paul.
There's paragraph 6.4, Chair, says, broadly speaking, the policies of the draft plan are not in the conflict with the strategic policies of the Ryedale plan and the policies in the strategic plan that specifically relate to the neighbourhood area. And that's the important point, Chair. So what I have concerns about is the detail. And I've been in discussion with the chair of the neighbourhood plan group, and he confirms that the planning office was invited to attend neighbourhood plan meetings, all neighbourhood plan meetings, and Jill Thompson came to most of them. She raised few, if any, of the detailed points made in the report that you've got before you between item 6.5 and the end. So Ryedale's planners have had continuous input over the last 10 years, and I would suggest that it's too late for them to suggest substantial changes now. I would remind members that this is a plan prepared by town councils. The town councils just do not have the amount of resources that are available to district councils when they prepare a full-scale district plan. And so therefore, you would not expect a neighbourhood plan to be supported by the weight of evidence that could be put into several wheelbarrows when you come to deal with a district plan. The resources of town councils are just not there. This plan has been delayed. It's taken 10 years to get to this point, and it's been delayed over and over again. And for example, there was one occasion when the district council was required to do regular reviews of conservation areas, and I understand Ryedale insisted that neighbourhood plan funds paid for an environment assessment and review of free conservation areas, even though this was not a district council responsibility, and the neighbourhood plan had to wait while this was done. As I say, Chair, paragraph 6.4 says that the plan accords with council policy, but then there's a whole raft of detail which the people who wrote the neighbourhood plan were not aware of and were not given any prior warning of. And there is much in what is said which is disputable. And I'll simply refer to one matter as an example. Otherwise, I would have to go on all evening. This is the outright refusal to accept the need for a four-way intersection between the Broughton Road and the A64. This is a view which is a key issue in the neighbourhood plan, one which hasn't been disputed by the district council, as far as I'm aware, and which we shouldn't include in our representations because, first of all, Ryedale is not the Highways Authority, and it is not up to Ryedale to make comments on highways matters. Secondly, I refer to paragraph 6.8, in which the officers require evidence to justify the need for a four-way intersection between the A64 and the Broughton Road. Well, the Ryedale plan, well, the evidence is there already. The evidence is on the ground. The Ryedale plan requires Moulton and Norton to accept 1,500 new dwellings.
Just to say we're at 4 minutes.
Paul,
yeah.
Is this a question or is it a contribution?
No, it's going to. I'm coming to the end, Chair.
No, I asked you if it was a question.
No, this was debate.
Right. Okay. On that basis, right.
Yeah.
Can I suggest that you leave it there?
Yeah.
And that I'll bring you back in later when others have had a chance to reflect on what you've said. But I will ask Gary to respond to that because I'm not up to date on all planning issues, particularly in relation to the 10-year saga over Moulton and Norton. But I do want you to have a fair crack. But I would like to hear what you've made. One or two comments, let's not be heavier than that, in relation to Ryedale planning officers. And I think Gary ought on their behalf to have the right to comment at this point, and then we'll see what the rest of the committee are thinking about it all. So I will bring you back later, but can you hang on at this point? Gary, is there anything you wish to be... as if that was a question. In other words, if Councillor Andrews had put at the end of it, what is the officer's view of my comments? Can you please give us anything in relation to the officers?
Thank you, Chairman, for turning that into a question for me. I think the essence of this this type of document, particularly the 8-page document that's been submitted, is in essence it does go into a lot of detail, and so when you get into a lot of detail in relation to a document that has been evolved over a period of time, then inevitably things change over a period of time. So, for example, just as an example, to quote, the document refers to the air quality management area in the town and refers to it still exceeding permitted limits for pollutants, which clearly for the last 2 or 3 years it hasn't. But it's just factual information of that nature where for the document to be accurate for submission, it really is helpful, I think, for officers to actually point out the issues that need correction before a plan is formally submitted for examination in the next few months. I think that the paragraph 5.4 does set out, because this is a plan that does need to be examined, because if it's adopted at the end of the day, it becomes part of our development plan, so we would use it. Yep. It does have to meet some basic conditions. And one of those talks about the neighbourhood plan being in general conformity with the strategic policies of the development plan, which by and large it is, but there are some elements of the plan that aren't. And for example, the four-way intersection that Councillor Andrews has just referred to at the Castle Howard Road, what would have been the Castle Howard Road junction, sorry, not Castle Howard Road, the Hovingham Road junction, B1257, with a four-way slip road on and off the A64, is not a requirement to deliver the development in the current strategy, because the level of development and the way the sites were distributed didn't need that at this point. And so to say that junction is needed now in terms of the neighbourhood plan is perhaps a step too far. Now, the plan does talk about aspirations and makes reference to other things such as the Norton Southern bypass, which is shown diagrammatically. But to require things now in this neighbourhood plan wouldn't sit with the development plan as it currently is. So that's one of the issues that we really need to focus on. But from that sort of level of comment in the plan, we've then got some very detailed comments on heritage, conservation area issues, which get down to the precise type of brick that ought to be used on every building or extension in the conservation area, which is too prescriptive. So there are a variety of things that really we think need refinement and further refinement before a plan of this nature is submitted for examination, because it would get pulled up on it. But what I would draw members' attention to here is at the end of all the paragraph numbers in section 6, is that paragraph 629 is that the district council is more than happy to continue work with the town councils as the plan's refined in response to the comments made, not just our own, but everybody else's. And that remains the case prior to formal submission, Chairman. We're aware that these documents are, I'll say labour intensive for want of a better word, but the council officers are there still to offer their assistance.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, Chair,
Anybody else?
Yeah, can I come back?
I said I asked you to come back later, Paul, please. Anybody else got any other comments to make on the whole neighbourhood plan?
Councillor Dockra, Chair.
Hi, Councillor Clark. This is not specific to the local plan, what we're discussing at the moment. Could I just ask, if somebody isn't on the committee, they're allowed to come and speak now? Is this the new format of Policy and Resources? That if you're not a member of the Policy and Resources Committee, but you are a councillor, you can come on and speak at the meeting?
No, I think you must have missed a little earlier. I had a request, or more accurately, the officers had a request to the chair of P&R for Councillor Andrews to speak on this item. We didn't have a chair, which you may recall the history of that, at that point. Right. The officers allowed him to come to the meeting. He then asked me at the beginning, would I give him permission to speak? Now, he is a local member, and I have allowed him to speak.
But what
I've then asked is, when he tried to speak a second time, I've said, no, thank you. I've asked for other members of the committee. Can we hear what you have to say on it, please, Councillor Dockra?
No, that's fine. I was just more interested in as to why this was the new. Well, if this was the new format and would be the new format.
No, it's the format we've had for the last 18 years. It's just it's if somebody wishes to come on to a committee to speak on an item, if they've got the chair's permission and the chair gives them permission, then they can do it.
Okay,
if it
fine.
helps, Chair, it's Council Procedure Rule 33 in the Constitution that allows a member to speak at a committee at the discretion of the chair.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't aware of that.
Don't take that too severely, Councillor Dockra. It's a minefield, is the rules and regulations from beginning to end, and nobody knows them all. Right. Anybody else wish to speak on this item?
Councillor Burr, Chair.
Lindsay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's not a question. We are in debate, aren't we?
We're in debate, yes.
Thank you.
I turned Councillor Andrews' statement into a question because there was inference as to what the officers had or hadn't done, and I thought it was only fair that Gary could answer those accusations if he wished to.
Thank you. So, developing this plan has been a very onerous task, and it has been brought together by Malton and Norton town councillors. So it is their plan, and there has been a cost that both the councils have had to bear to bring this to us, but they feel it's so important that they wanted to carry on with this. They wanted the neighbourhood plan to sit alongside and be considered with the Ryedale development plan.
Yep.
So the neighbourhood plan is very much wanted. It's endorsed by the councillors on both town councils, Norton and Malton. They've worked together, and has been said previously with the input from Ryedale officers. My concern is that it has been going on for 10 years, and it really, really does need sorting out once and for all. And I hear what Gary says, and I thank him very much to say that he wants to work alongside the councillors, and the leads on that committee will be very, very pleased. But I feel that there is so much detail in here that it's quite overbearing. Now, I have also spoken to the authors of this plan, and they really feel to move this forward, it would be better if we endorsed the plan with not as much detail, because it is going to be in line with the Ryedale development plan. So bearing that in mind, I have got amendment, Chairman, but I would like to maybe listen to what other members say, and then if I could put my amendment forward, please.
Yeah, can you shout at me if I forget to come back for that amendment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, we've got Councillor Joy Andrews and Councillor Duncan.
Councillor Andrews, Joy.
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually wanting to put an amendment in myself after reading through this.
Can I ask you to leave that till after Councillor Burr? Otherwise, we're going to have two amendments at one go, and it's going to get complex.
I shall wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to pick up on 2 points that have been raised. Councillor Andrews mentioned that town councils do not have the amount of resources of a district council, and says that the resources of a town council are just not there. And I could perhaps agree with him, although I do think that the document that's been produced on the whole seems to me to be comprehensive, and it's got a lot of work that's gone into it. So there's no slight whatsoever on the authors of the document. But then Councillor Burrs obviously rightly mentioned that there's been an onerous task putting this together, and that a lot of work's gone in, but that the resources which we do have, the officers that we have, planning professionals, that there's too much detail in the response that they're giving back to the consultation on this document, that it's overbearing, and that it would be better to endorse the plan, and perhaps, although I wouldn't like to second guess what she's going to propose in terms of the amendment, might be that we somehow cut back or cut down on the expert opinion of the planning officers and the resources that we have as a council. So I'm trying to marry up the two chains of thought within the independent group, but two members that represent Moulton. One who is saying that town councils don't have the resources of a district council, and another member who is saying district councils have got those resources, but we don't want them. We don't want to have that opinion. And I actually feel like the response that's been put forward by our officers seems to me to be comprehensive and professional. It may not necessarily be all 100% every point that we can agree with, but it is their professional opinion. And I think we need to be very, very important here that we actually recognise that if we're looking for our professional planning officers to offer their professional advice, that we don't pick and choose the advice that they might give. I think we either take the response that's been put forward as it has been written by the officers, or we don't give any response at all. My personal view is that we give the response that's been drafted by the expert professionals that work for us as a council. We have to remember that both Councillor Andrews, who I acknowledge is here as an observer, and Councillor Burr, who is here as a member of the committee, they are both here as Ryedale district councillors. They're not here as Moulton town councillors. I think that is a very important distinction to make. So on the whole, maybe I could argue with individual sentences or individual paragraphs or individual words. On the whole, I do feel like the proposed response from Ryedale District Council's professional officers is the right one, and I feel that we should accept it. And of course, I can't, if Councillor Burr and Councillor Andrews wish to proceed with their amendments, that's fair enough, that's their choice to make. But I do feel like we've got a recommendation on the table around the proposed response, and I think we either accept it or we don't. We don't handpick the advice that we might like and the advice that we don't like. And if the officers are providing their view, their professional opinion, their services, we should actually say thank you very much. And I think the authors of the neighbourhood plan should be grateful for the advice and the consultation response that perhaps officers are giving back.
I wonder, your confusion is similar to mine, Kane. the plan itself is very thorough. And there's one sentence here, which half phrase that I'm hanging on to. Broadly, the policies in the draft plan are not in conflict with the strategic policies of the Ryedale plan. So it doesn't sound as though we have a revolution on our hands here. It sounds as though basically it's in the same direction. And the comments that we may or may not be endorsing tonight are the officers' comments in relation to the neighbourhood plan. But if I understand it correctly, and I maybe don't, the Moulton and Norton town councils don't have to take any notice of what Ryedale is saying. I think they'd be advised to take note of what Ryedale is saying, but I don't think they have to take any notice of it. However, it's then got to get past an inspector. I think it's more likely that Ryedale's got the expertise as to how to get past an inspector than the two town councils. So I'm not sure that the arguments we've heard so far are actually taking us anywhere. But I'm going to listen further to see if there's a way through. Anybody else wanting to speak on it?
No, Chair.
Me, Chair, I was going to come back. You were going to give me the chance.
Yes. Go on then, come back, Paul. Can you answer Councillor Duncan's concerns and mine, please?
Yes. The comments that are. I mean, I can go into great detail, Chair.
No, I want the principle behind it.
But the example that I came forward with was the highways thing. All that the neighbourhood says about the highways policies, policy number TM4, I think it is, which says that the following areas as identified on the neighbourhood plans proposal map, which there shall be no developments which would prevent the provision of such improvements not being supported. And one of those improvements was a link between the A64, between the I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. But basically, we're saying that no development should prejudice the future of building a four-way motorway intersection between the A64 and the Broughton Road. And the need for it is self-evident. It's not.
Okay. You've got that point across.
It's not in conflict with the district plan, and there's no reason why the neighbourhood plan shouldn't ask for it. But nevertheless, in these detailed comments, oppose it. Hang
on. If you are proposing it, and Ryedale is advising you not to propose it, and this is with you with a town council hat on, and I agree with Councillor Duncan, you're not here with that on, but on the other hand, you are, because you are a member of that, and you did declare an interest. If the council takes no notice, says you shouldn't be doing this, my understanding is you can still put it in your neighbourhood plan, as it is, and the inspector will decide. Now, on that basis, I can't see any point in getting too concerned, because bluntly, I thought all you're asking for, if I understand you correctly, is that development shouldn't prevent that road junction from happening. Not that you're wanting that road junction, whether you do or you don't is secondary, because that road junction will be a matter of not just North Yorkshire, it will be a matter of North Yorkshire and the Highways Agency that isn't the Highways Agency. Right. I think you've had a fair back, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Burr, you had an amendment.
Yes, I wanted to make an amendment. I wanted to put an amendment in to 6.4 at the end.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, has this been proposed and seconded, the recommendation?
No, it hasn't, Councillor Duncan. You're absolutely right. Right, can we do that? I'll propose it. Let's speed it up. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And that is proposing the recommendations on 2.1. Right. Okay. You must move an amendment.
I would like to move an amendment, yes. And I would like adding to 6.4, where it's under, it says proposed RDC response on page 25.
Yep.
The neighbourhood plan needs to be aligned with the Ryedale development plan.
Is this at the end of that paragraph?
Yeah.
The District Council is of the view that Malton and Norton has the potential to add to the existing policies of the development plan, provide a further suite of policies specific to the twin towns and their immediate hinterland, and then your amendment comes after hinterland, yeah?
Yes, please.
Right, and its wording is?
To be aligned with the Ryedale development plan.
Yep.
And that's it. And I'm not sure if I have a seconder. I hope so, but
I'll second that.
Right, I'm now going to go to Gary and Simon to see if that is legal and acceptable in planning terms. Is it doable in planning terms, etc.?
Chairman, I don't think there's any great controversy there, in the sense that the one of the basic requirements is that the neighbourhood plan is required to be in general conformity with the strategic policies of our development plan, which I think is what Councillor Burr's words are in effect.
Yep. Right. Any problems, Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I don't anticipate any problems. We do have a legal advisor here, so I just wanted to check if there was any legal matters or advice you wanted to give relating to the amendment.
Thank you, Simon. No, I'm in complete agreement with Gary on this. It's absolutely normal that the requirement is that it sort of broadly conforms with the local plan in any event. So I can't see any difficulty with the wording that's proposed in the amendment.
My bucolic hunch was that it was actually asking for something that was uncontroversial, but just tidying it up. Right, does anybody wish to speak on the amendment as such?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
In which case...
Apologies, Chair. Councillor Duncan.
It's just to ask, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, it's been moved and seconded. We haven't heard the reasoning why it's been moved or seconded.
I'm coming to that. Does anybody else? Lindsay's spoken on it, but if she wants to speak further, she can. Do you want to speak any further on it, Lindsay?
I wasn't going to, Chairman, but I just want it strengthening, and I just want it to be in line with the Ryedale development plan. I want everybody to work together. I want, Gary to support Malton and Norton Town Council. And yes, I am on both those councils, but I am a Ryedale district councillor, and that is why I'm wanting this to be strengthened. So I didn't think it was going to be controversial. I hope it isn't, but you never know in today.
So far, I don't think it is. Were you wanting to say anything further, Councillor Duncan?
It was just to say that it's not controversial, but at the same time, I just can't see that it is adding anything of any material benefit whatsoever to the response that's being put forward. It states in the very first couple of sentences about the policies in the draft plan being aligned to our strategic policies of the Ryedale plan. And I just can't understand.
That's the bit I read out, yeah.
Yeah, and I just can't understand how these words add anything to the consultation response. It's not controversial, but again, I just can't understand exactly why it's being proposed. I'm not got a strong view to oppose it or a strong view to support it, because I don't think it adds anything materially to the response. I was just wondering if there was further reasoning from Councillor Burr on this, and that's why I asked for it.
Yeah. I thank you for that, and I have similar views to yours. But on the other hand, sometimes there's no harm in stating something twice. So I can live with it, but I might not have moved it myself. Is there anybody else wants to speak on this amendment?
No,
Is there
Chair.
anybody wanting to speak against it? Or can we do it without a vote?
There's no raised hands, Chair.
So are we all happy that we just accept that amendment to the original motion by affirmation? Anybody wanted to come back? Tony, you've got the right of the seconder to come back, sorry.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're happy, are you?
Yeah.
Right. Let's take that as agreed. Councillor Andrews, Joy Andrews, you had an amendment.
Yes, it was that the proposed response from, it's on 2.1. It is recommended that the proposed response from paragraph 6.4 of this report is agreed, and that any further revision, and then I want to put in, after planning committee has been consulted, are included by the head of planning and regulatory services, etc., etc. Shall I repeat that again for the officer, or?
Yes, please. And for the chair.
I'm sorry. The proposed response from paragraph 6.4 of this report is agreed, and that any further revisions after the planning committee has been consulted are included by the head of planning and regulatory services, etc.
Was that the chair of planning or the planning committee? I didn't hear what you said. Planning committee. Yeah, sorry. Well, I'll second that from the chair, because I have a general philosophy. It does no harm to bring in whatever expertise and advice we have from anywhere. And I have this naive belief that members of the planning committee probably know a little more about planning than most of us on the P&R committee. But I'm happy with that. I'll second it, in fact. Anybody got any?
I was going to speak on it, but I think Gary's got his hand up. It's gone down again.
Yeah. Before we go ahead with it, can I ask the same question as last time to Gary and to Simon?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the dilemma that we have is that this is a time-limited consultation, and you don't have a planning committee now until the 13th of April, so you missed the boat. There is, however, nothing to stop anybody on the planning committee making their own response to the consultation, and clearly that might be more pertinent to some of the more local members on the committee, who are some of whom are here tonight, and so individuals can make comments, as could the chair of committee. Perhaps we talk about agreeing in consultation with the chair of P&R on the recommendation, which I think was probably where you were going, Chairman, with your question. But timescale wise, we've got the 26th of March, which I think is next week.
Doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself? On that basis, could I ask And I wonder if we could consider whether or not we take this amendment. Could we ask the head of planning, etc., if he would consult with the chair of planning, or would he inform the members of the planning committee of this consultation and ask them for any comments to come back to himself in consultation with the chair of Policy and Resources Committee, and then that achieves it without having to be the full planning committee. That's why I was asking the question, was it to the chair of planning or to the planning committee?
Chair, could I make a suggestion?
Hang on a minute, Paul. I'm talking to Gary at the moment. Is that possible, Gary?
Chairman, it's possible. I mean, you probably have to do it fairly sharpish tomorrow.
I have full faith in your speed at doing it quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. It would be an email to members of the committee to follow that line of logic and request a response by almost over the weekend, really. It's really what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Well, that's right. I accept that. And if they don't come back over the weekend, they've missed the boat. Can
I just say something then, Chairman?
Go on.
I'm happy to withdraw that because of the time scale. The reason I did put this in, but I realised there is time constraints, was that when I did read it, I would have been more comfortable with Councillor Goodrick and her committee and her knowledge, expertise and know-how. That was all. But I'm quite willing to withdraw that amendment. Thank you.
Chair, can I make a suggestion?
Hang on a second, Paul. We're nearly there. Are we saying, I think we've got the best of both worlds here. We can't do it via the planning committee on timescales, but we can get the input from the members of the planning committee if Gary asks them tomorrow, and they've got till Monday or whatever to come back with any comments they've got, possibly via their chair or copying the chair of planning in, because it would be unfair on the chair of planning to have 9 comments coming in of which she was unaware of. I'll leave that with you, Gary, if you're happy with that.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
In which case, yes, Councillor Andrews, if you withdrew your motion, I think that would be helpful. Your amendment.
Yes, that's fine.
Can I make a suggestion before she does that?
Yes, Paul, let's hear you.
Could the council not ask the neighbourhood plan committee if they would be prepared to accept the council's observations as a late observation? And because if that is done,
but I've no idea whether they will do that or not. So,
your chair, what you could do is you could do as you were suggesting, but saying that first of all, that would be subject to the neighbourhood plan committee saying they wouldn't be able to accept a late.
Let's get it done in time for their deadline, and then it's done and out of the way.
Because
rather than risk them saying, no, we're not extending it or we're not accepting late things, etc. And that means that the members of the planning committee have a chance to make a comment and be aware of it. They may all be aware of it, but now they will be aware of it and they have a chance to make a comment.
The only trouble is they won't be able to actually talk and debate about it, Chair.
I understand that, but we can't do that because the timescale doesn't allow.
But if we could have a late debate on it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
We could have a late debate on it, and that would be up to Moulton and Norton town councils to put in a request, and I would look upon it favourably, but they've got to come back saying we would like to hear it, not us take the chance that they would like to hear it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Sorry, with the greatest of respect, obviously I'm a member of this committee and I've had my hand up now for quite some time. I think other members do too. I think the moral of this story is perhaps you'll soon learn, Councillor Clark, is that if you give an inch, people tend to take a mile. And I have to say, I'm
fully aware of that, and it's something to do with rope, Councillor Duncan.
Well, perhaps. I think it's one thing inviting someone to make one comment on an item. It's different when that person then starts getting involved in the ins and outs of the committee's workings. I did have one comment to make, which
I thank you for your input. I'm fully aware of that, but I am also aware of Councillor Andrews's commitment to this subject for at least 10 years, when it was considered completely outlandish and nobody anywhere had town and parish neighbourhood plans. And Moulton and Norton have been trying to achieve this for a long time. So I hope you will be forgiving and compassionate and understanding, but it does take a little time.
They're all qualities, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to think that I had, but that wasn't the point I was trying to make. The point I was trying to make is that members of this committee have wanted to speak and haven't been able to because a member of the committee is not on here.
I have not been made aware of anybody wishing to speak that I knew of, because I've asked them to come in first on all occasions.
Yeah, I do now have the comment that I originally wanted to make, Mr. Chairman, which was that some members of this committee seem to spend a lot of time obsessing over consulting the views of the planning committee. Now, when I was chairman of this committee, there was an item where this came forward where we said that we consult not just members of the planning committee, but members of all of the council. And we found on that particular issue that no one gave any comment whatsoever. No member of the planning committee, no member of the council at all. And I would just like to say that I think the very simple solution to this is that you are now the chairman of Policy and Resources. Any member of this council can contact you and can consult you at any time, pass on views for you to take into account when you speak to the head of planning to formulate the response.
Absolutely.
And that to me seems completely logical.
No problem with that at all.
Trying to move.
I was aware of that, but thank you for reminding me.
Trying to move amendments to consult a committee.
No, I haven't tried to move. I haven't tried to move a single amendment to anything.
Councillor Clark, what I was saying is, rather than trying to consult a committee which might not want to be consulted, we should respect the fact that this is the committee that decides the policies of the council, including planning policies. This is the committee that replies to consultations, including planning consultations, and every group on the council is represented on this committee. I admit the Liberal Democrats aren't, and they are perhaps unfortunate group to be excluded from this committee, but they are the only exception that doesn't have a representative on here to air views and share views with the committee. We have a representative system. I've consulted all of my group on this item. We'll be able to bring any comments that they had to this committee. That is the nature of committees. That's how they work. And I would just say again that perhaps we need to be less obsessive about consulting other people, and when they know full well, I'm sure, that they can share views with you as a chairman of P&R in your new style, the new coalition behind you, to feed their views in. I'm sure that will happen going forward.
I thank you very much for your kind comments, but I would like to point out, and you hinted at it, that there are 2 Liberal Democrats out of the 7 councillors for Moulton, district councillors for Moulton and Norton, and those 2 are not represented on this committee, but one of them is represented on planning, and now they will be reminded of it. That is all. The timing of full consultation with them, not them making decision, but asking for their views, was put forward. We moved because the timescale didn't fit, and we've come to an adequate compromise. Can we move on, please?
Councillor Arnold, Chair.
Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, John. Councillor Andrews has been rabbiting on for quite a long while now, and I just wondered, is he representing the town councils themselves, or is he speaking on his behalf? His personal behalf?
Councillor Arnold, can I suggest that we're in danger of people spending more time rabbiting on about Councillor Andrews than even Councillor Andrews is rabbiting on? Can we please move on?
I didn't get an answer.
You did get an answer. I've given you one. Right. Can I move the recommendation as amended? Is there? And that's the amendment put forward by Councillor Burr that was agreed. We're waiting for Councillor we'll come back to Councillor Duncan in a second. Not Councillor Duncan, Councillor Delaney. Right, on that basis, are we all agreed with the recommendation as amended? So if anybody wants to go against it or calling for a vote?
No, Chair.
No, thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Gary. Can I flip back before I forget? And that is the Grants Working Party and Councillor Delaney. You lost contact. Are you back now?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am, although my name appears as Samantha. I've not changed my name. I've just managed to log on to my wife's laptop.
Your name is Samantha. Well, in which case, do you wish to be called Chris or Samantha? I don't mind which.
Whatever you want, Mr. Chairman. So I managed to on the live stream. So yes, I followed the debate on the live stream on my iPhone. You want my vote, Mr. Chairman?
We were about to take a vote and nobody spoke against the recommendations of the Working Party. And rather than A, you miss your vote, or B, go a vote individually right through, everybody was in agreement. But I wanted to check that A, you were, and B, that you had nothing else to raise on it and that you were happy with us approving it.
Yeah. Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Lovely. Can the officers take that information back and can we approve that one by acclamation or whatever?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right. We now move on to local government reorganisation, an item put forward under Rule 32 by myself. And I would like to hand over the chair, if Councillor Frank, and we haven't discussed this because we didn't know we were going to be in this position. Would you be happy to take the chair, Janet, for this one, so that I can speak to it properly, etc.?
Yes, I can do that. That's fine.
Thank you. I'll go straight into it.
I was just if you'll crack on with it. Yeah, thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman / Madam Chairman. Can I please just clarify why what the precedent is for this happening? Because you are here and you are the chairman, and if you were absent in some capacity, Councillor Clark, then I would totally understand you passing to the vice chairman of the committee. But given that you are here, given that you have the ability to speak, I don't quite understand where things stand at the moment. I would just want to clarify with the monitoring officer what precedent there might be for the chairman remaining
Councillor Duncan,
in the meeting.
Which way would you like me to do it?
I was just wanting to hear from Simon, if possible, about the
procedure.
procedure.
But before we go to Simon, we'll go to Simon in a minute. Which way would you like me to do it?
Well, it's not what I'd like,
well, you're questioning what I've done before we've even started, but go on, what would you like?
I just wanted to raise a genuine query, which is, if the chairman is present at the meeting, they are expected to chair the meeting, not to
we'll
pass
do that
over
then,
to
if that's what you prefer.
I was just raising it. I was just raising it as a genuine query, Councillor Clark.
No, we won't worry about that. We haven't got time for queries, genuine or others. Janet, are you happy for me to carry on as the chair?
Yeah, whatever, as long as we can carry on with
exactly. Thank you. Okay, I will carry on as the chair. Councillor Clark, would you like to introduce your agenda item under Procedure Rule 32? Thank you, Chair. One of the problems that we've had with the reorganisation is lack of councillor knowledge. And as far as I'm aware, this council has not at any point voted on, debated, discussed the final East-West submission. We certainly haven't discussed the North Yorkshire county bid, and we certainly haven't heard from the City of York. and the City of York is very important because it either carries on as its own entity and is a neighbour to us, if it was the North Yorkshire bid, or is forced into a marriage with us, whether York likes it or not. Because I'm unaware of what discussions there've been with York, and I'm sure there've been lots of discussions with York, but I'd like to hear from York what discussions they've had. So this item on the agenda is asking that we have a members' briefing on the three submissions. A presentation on the East-West bid from somebody who's backing the East-West bid from a council or two councils outside of Ryedale, so that it's on a fair footing. A presentation from the North Yorkshire County Council on their bid, and the views of York City Council, what their views are on both proposals that are in front of people. When we've had that briefing, we will be better informed, and that will enable us to call a further special meeting in accordance with Rule 27 in order to discuss the presentations and consider making recommendations to a full council meeting to determine the consultation response with sufficient time to submit it before the government deadline. Now, I can't see anything controversial in that, but I wish to move that as a motion. That is what we do, and I'd like to see if anybody would like to second it.
I'll second that.
Who was that? Was that Councillor Andrews?
Councillor Andrews, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Joe. Right.
Mr. Chairman, my hand is raised.
Right, thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Just to say, given that you put this on the agenda, Councillor Clark, presumably we're able to ask you questions in lieu of asking an officer questions?
I don't mind. Perfectly happy. Go on in.
I just wanted to check for complete transparency, Councillor Clark. Clearly, you have had several conversations with the leader of North Yorkshire County Council on this issue already, so you are probably potentially better briefed than other members of Ryedale District Council on the North Yorkshire County Council bid. I wanted to ask you if you will tell the committee and all councillors the dates in which you have had conversations with the leader of the County Council, the content of those discussions with the leader of the County Council, what promises you may have made to the leader of the County Council, and if you have discussed the proposal that's been put on the agenda this evening with the leader of North Yorkshire County Council.
Say that all again. In fact, say it all again, and could I have it in writing? Because my conversations on the North Yorkshire bid could probably be written down on not much more than a large envelope stamp back of, and you have a strange assumption here that I am backing the North Yorkshire bid. And I am strongly opposed to the North Yorkshire bid and any other bid that gets rid of local representation, local decision making. But anyway, if you could let me have that question in writing, I could endeavour to, but it will be incredibly limited And I've had no discussions as to the content and the makeup of North Yorkshire's bid or York's bid or anybody else's bid, or our own bid for that matter.
Thank you.
We haven't had any discussions on it. You've had a few fireside chats, but none where we've contributed to the debate as such.
Okay.
Anyway, does that help you?
I was just going to say, I think you heard my question. I think you've refused to answer the question.
No, I haven't heard it. No, I haven't. I'm not.
Hello.
I do not carry with me any conversations I've had of an incredibly brief nature with anybody in relation to the North Yorkshire bid or any other bid.
But you have, Councillor Clark, had conversations with the leadership of North Yorkshire County Council.
I have had no conversations with anybody in relation to their bids.
Okay, your version of events clearly differs to the version of events of the leader of North Yorkshire County Council.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
Chairman, we have Councillor Dockra and Councillor Frank.
Councillor Dockra?
Councillor Dockra, you're on mute.
I can't hear. Hello?
Hello, yes, I'm here. The first thing is that I'm surprised that you feel this is necessary to have presentations and an extra meeting. Resources are stretched at the moment. The staff at Ryedale are under pressure anyway with everything else that's going on. And the information Councillor Frank said about City of York, how City of York feel about the new councils is available readily. We've had the documentation, we've seen the bid from North Yorkshire County Council, and we've seen our own bid. I fail to understand why we need to call a special meeting. Surely people can access the internet and access this information. It is there and they can make an informed choice. This seems to me like you're doing a sales pitch. It is common knowledge within County Council that Councillor Clark is backing the North Yorkshire County Council bid. It is well known within other county councillors. I've been told this by numerous ones. So this seems to me as though you're using valuable resources, staff time, to put a sales pitch to us. And actually, if people sitting on this meeting can't read the information and the plans and the proposals that are out there, that's pretty poor. Thank you.
Was that a question?
My question is, can you tell me, are you actually going to be honest and tell this this committee where your allegiance lies?
For the, I was going to say fourth, fifth time, I have not got an allegiance to anybody. I have discussed it with umpteen people on a passing level as to what's happening. This is the second time I've been round this lot. We did it, I can't remember how many years ago it was now, but it must be 9 or 10 or whatever, when we went round. And I have a very simplistic view. Last time round and this time round. That it's got to, housing and planning and so on have got to be done locally. And none of this lot, from what I've seen as a cursory glance, is done locally. And I am not backing anybody's bid as they stand. And on that basis, I would like to know more. If people feel that they've got all the evidence they want and all the information they want, then they don't need to take part in these discussions and briefings. But if you talk to the public, who've got the same access to all the internet things, they say, I don't know anything about it. And my contact with the public is much reduced, as everybody else's is at the moment. But the little bit of feedback I've been getting recently is, I don't understand what they're all about. And I think it would be a benefit if we did have a public debate on them all. And as for it being a sales pitch for one of them and not another one, I don't know which one I'm backing. Councillor Duncan seems to know. You seem to know.
Well,
I don't know.
That's available.
Pardon?
I've read all the reports. I've read everything.
Yes, I'm sure you have. I'm absolutely sure you have. And those reports clearly tell you what my views are. Right. Anybody else got any questions?
Yes, Chair. There's Councillor Frank, Councillor Arnold, Councillor Delaney and Councillor Joy Andrews. Councillor Frank first.
Frank, Councillor Frank. Can you run them through again, please? Councillor, I didn't catch all those names, Chris.
Councillor Frank,
Yeah.
Councillor Arnold and Councillor Delaney.
Frank, Arnold, Delaney and Joy Andrews.
Councillor Andrews has lowered her hand now.
Chair, I'm not on questions. I hands up for the debate, so I'll remove my hand for now.
Right, I'll remove your hand, Steve.
That's fine, thank you, John. I've got another one.
Janet?
Can you just remind us all when the government deadline is, what date the government deadline is? I think we could just do to be reminded of that.
I think it's 3 or 4 days after next full council, but the officers would be able to tell us that accurately.
Yes, Chair, I'm just checking for you. It's the 19th of April.
Which will be the Monday. And full council is on the
15th.
15th.
Thank you.
So it would be possible to have got it to fit in with the full council on the 15th. Councillor Delaney.
Councillor Delaney's lost connection, I think.
Can somebody remind me to go to him when he gains his connection back again?
Mr. Chairman, I think I've just rejoined in time. Is that correct?
I didn't hear
Councillor
that.
Delaney. Yeah.
Sorry,
is that you, Chris?
I don't know what's going on. It is, Councillor Clark. Yeah, I'm having terrible issues tonight.
Keep going. I'll keep coming back to you. We won't lose you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Clark, I feel it's a bit like Groundhog Day with this. We make a decision and then 6 months later we revisit it, debate it again, a bit like the cattle market. I mean, I attended many members' briefings that Councillor Duncan did several over the summer, read both reports and all the evidence, and I was happy on that basis to support submitting the East-West bid. As I said, there were members' briefings on this over the summer. There were many members of this committee that attended. My own group, there were members from there. I think Councillor Frank, Councillor Ryedale, I think attended, possibly Councillor Burr. Obviously, I don't think yourself attended those sessions, and that was an opportunity there to have that frank and honest and open discussion about the different models and the different scenarios. So, for me, my question to you, Mr. Chairman, is what benefit will bringing this forward now have that we didn't have all the information in the summer, the reports and the briefings? Why didn't we have these discussions then when you had the opportunity to do that? Why are we bringing it back 6 months later to discuss it now? Thank you.
My answer to that is very straightforward, but I think it's a little repetitive of what we've already had. And that is, we were not comparing the final bids at any point because we didn't have North Yorkshire's bid. When we were handed over to the Chief Executive our bid, we have never debated our bid as such. We gave permission and the money to submit a bid, but we did not at any point debate it, what the bid was. We haven't debated it since we submitted it. We hadn't debated the North Yorkshire one since theirs was submitted. And we don't, to my knowledge, know anywhere the views of the City of York. So on that basis, it seems sensible, as this is the future of the democratic representation of the people of Ryedale, that we ought to have the thing laid out in front of us so that we could decide which way we wanted to go, if we want to go one way as a council or not. We may not. But council certainly hasn't at any point voted on supporting a bid because we've never had that debate in council.
Can I have a supplementary? Very quick?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Do you not feel then that, I don't know the circumstances around your lack of attendance during those briefings, but do you not feel
Sorry, can I interrupt you, Chris?
Yeah.
Bluntly, I'm not talking about consultations. The consultations were not decision-making and not on the final bid.
But do you not feel that your lack of participation in those conversations that we had was detrimental to the council at that point and the decision making we're taking now?
No, because we're making a decision now not on what bid we put in. We're making a decision now on the bids that are in front of us. And I don't remember, I could have missed it, any debate on York, any debate on North Yorkshire, or any debate on the East-West bid. Now, I don't see any harm in looking at all three. We may have a council view, we may not have a council view, and if we don't have a council view, we don't have one. But we haven't debated it as such in open forum. And I'm suggesting with this motion that we have members' briefings on all of them, and then as a result of those briefings, we decide whether to carry it on, not to P&R and or full council, so as to whether or not we do a collective. We could take, let's go through an example. We could take the North Yorkshire bid and say, ooh, like that, but we don't like these two aspects of it. So, oh government, we want to amend the North Yorkshire bid. Or we don't like the East-West bid, because we've never debated it. We would like to do that to it, or this to it. Or we like the East-West bid very much indeed. And somebody from Harrogate, or Craven, or Richmond, or whatever, chief executive and a senior councillors, can make a presentation on why the East-West is best. And North Yorkshire can make a presentation on why North Yorkshire's bid is best. And York can tell us why they don't like any of it, whatever. We have not done that in any shape or form.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like a question now.
Have you turned your statement into a question, or?
No, I've got a question now from just what you've said.
Yep.
You said after our discussions, we're going to say we'd like to amend our bid.
We might.
How can we amend a bid that's already gone to the government and the government is making decisions on a bid that we've sent in? How can we amend it?
In the same way as we can amend, we can say we like this but not that bit on anything in this.
You can't.
All we're at the position now, all we're at now is at a position where there are two bids in front of us. We don't have to accept either of them. We could expect part of one and part of another, whatever.
That's nonsense.
The government hasn't said, the government has not said we will have to support one of them or none of them. We could decide to support none of them. Well, we could decide that we want to leave it all as it is. We haven't considered that option. And I don't know which, despite everybody, particularly Councillor Duncan and Councillor Dockwra, thinking they know what my thinking is, because I'm impressed, because I don't know what my thinking on it is yet.
Really?
Really? Yes, really. I'm not accusing you of anything.
Sorry, I was muted. So I'm sorry. You can't change the bid that's been agreed with Selby and Scarborough because Ryedale wants to change it. That's impossible.
Where does it say that?
I said it.
No. I heard you say it, but where does the government say that?
It doesn't, but you can't. Selby and Scarborough will not agree to you adjusting something that's gone to the government. They won't do it. So that's the only alternative then is to Ryedale to pull out. If you don't like it, hang
on. We've done that bit. That bit is in the rear view mirror. We have submitted a bid.
Yeah.
Job done.
Yeah, but you can't amend it.
But there is nothing to stop the council considering all the bids and deciding what it wants. There's nothing to stop an individual doing that. I've been round this circuit 3 times now.
We were told when the bid went in, prior to it going in, once the bid's gone in, you cannot amend it because it's gone in. And that's all I'm going to say, because I could argue with you all night.
Okay, jolly good.
Councillor Graham and Councillor Dockra, Chair.
Come on, next 2. We're not going to get much of a debate at this rate.
I'd just like to ask a question, Mr. Chairman. You said to Councillor Duncan you'd had no discussions on the bids. And then you told Councillor Dockra you'd had umpteen passing conversations. It's time to be honest.
Hang on. I have discussed with almost anybody anywhere the bids and what's going on. But I haven't kept a list of how many times when I bumped into some parish councillor somewhere, some county councillor somewhere, some district councillor somewhere, my comments and thoughts on the bids. But I haven't had any negotiations, discussions with anybody on any bids. I'm not at that exalted level. I've just been a backbench councillor that people have said, what do you think of? I wish I had the power you think I've got.
Not a good start, is it?
Sorry?
I said not a good start, is it?
What's not a good start?
The fact that we're having to have this conversation at all.
What would you prefer to do?
I'd prefer an honest answer.
I've given you an honest answer. Are you questioning my word? Councillor Graham?
You are no longer a backbencher, you're the chair, and I would like to see that taken seriously.
I understand that. I'm asking you if you're questioning my word.
Can we move on a bit? This is getting a bit bogged down. Can we move on?
No, it's not getting bogged down at all if my word's been questioned. If you've got any evidence for that, let's see it. And if you haven't, I think the answer is the other thing.
There's plenty of evidence that you have
Jolly good.
discussions
You haven't given me any.
NYCC.
Can we move on? Is there anybody else with any questions? Councillor Dockra, I think you've had one, but have another one.
No, it's fine. I'll wait for debate. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Is there any more questions?
No, Chair.
Fine. I've spoken to it. I think the questions have covered a lot of it. Is there anybody else wants to speak against it or for it?
Chair, there's Councillor Dockra and Councillor Andrews.
Councillor Dockra?
Yeah, I find this incredible that actually we've come to this point. Frequently, yourself and Councillor Potter, obviously not this meeting, but other meetings, has referred to the cosy fire.
Frequently myself and, sorry, I didn't hear.
Councillor Potter, have
Councillor
repeated.
Potter. Oh, yeah.
In full council have repeatedly referred to the cosy fireside chats. Actually, that was how democracy had to work at the start of the pandemic, and the Liberals chose not to join in. We discussed, as the rest of the council, we met and we discussed the proposals. Repeatedly, you're going on about what City of York have to say about this. City of York have made their position abundantly clear. They are not interested in negotiating with any other group, with any other organisation. They feel that they're going to be left on their own. As I said earlier, we are putting more pressure on the staff. We're having, as a group, as a council, we decided to submit. We've submitted. We cannot amend a submission that other councils have financially contributed to. You know, all these councils have contributed to this, and now suddenly this is something that we have to do. And I just cannot grasp for 1 minute why this is going ahead. We all had discussions about what proposal we put forward, and we backed this as a council. As I say, you know, the Liberals had a sabbatical over the summer, but, you know, the rest of us were here and were committed to discussing this. I just feel it's incredible that we're at this point now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Councillor Andrews and Councillor Arnold, Chair.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I welcome this, especially now when it's at the forefront of everybody's mind. It's gone out to consultation. The public are asking me questions. And yes, I have read on several websites the different bids, but I haven't been able to ask questions on it. I haven't been able to ask the reasoning behind it. And why they've omitted all of them, as much localism as I would like to see. So I think to have something like this would be good. So I can ask once they've given their presentations, I can ask questions, because websites don't give answers to questions you may have. And I personally haven't reached a decision. I've looked at the East West, I've looked at the North Yorkshire, and I am particularly happy with either of them. And I would like to see more. I realise that we can't amend them, but that we can actually shout about it as well, in the hope that we do get some sort of localism coming from both these presentations. Therefore, I think it would be a good thing to have this discussed in open, rather than. I know it was difficult with the pandemic and that, but you know, this is the biggest shake-up in the last 50 years of government, and especially local government. And I think it should have been far more transparent and far more easier for the local electorate to watch, see, and come to their own decisions. Thank you.
We've got somebody else, and I can't remember who it was.
Me.
Steve.
Thank you, John. I have actually no intention of supporting any of this, nor in any intention of attending any members' briefings, if, unfortunately, this proposal goes ahead. This proposal is abhorrent, self-interesting, and designed to be destructive.
This proposal is what, Steve? Sorry, I didn't hear. This proposal is what?
Abhorrent, self-interesting, and designed to be destructive. It flies into complete conflict with the KMPG recommendations, council recommendations, union recommendations, and recommendations from Scarborough and Selby. It is a complete affront to our chief exec, officers and staff who've put our proposals together and also support them. How foolish we will look if in the end we support the North Yorkshire bid and disregard our own. RDC name is on the East-West proposal that has gone to the government. Are we really going to be saying, sorry, we don't like that now, we've changed our mind? Our chief exec, as was our last leader, officers and staff have worked extremely hard to put these proposals together. Are you prepared to let them down? Are you prepared to let the businesses down and residents who have supported us? Are you prepared to let the 21 members of the council who supported us as well? The proposals, are you prepared to let yourself down? We do not need an East-West presentation. If you want to know about the North Yorkshire bid, you can read about it. Why do you want to know about the York proposals? They are a non-entity, too small, very dysfunctional, and will hopefully get absorbed. I believe that anyone who supports this proposal are letting themselves down, RDC down, and also the whole of Ryedale. And I've already mentioned about the bid, so I'm not going to argue about that anymore. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Arnold.
Councillor Frank, Chair.
Janet.
Well, got to carry on. I think where this has come from and where it's going to, I don't know, but where it's come from, I asked time and time again that all councillors go to all consultation meetings. And Steve, you know I did. You know when you said we'll go to a presentation with the Conservatives, we'll go to this presentation, we'll collude with the Conservatives on this. And I said time and time again that all groups ought to be involved and all groups ought to go to all the presentations and we all ought to talk about it together. And it didn't happen. And now half of us know this and half of us know that and somebody doesn't know something else. And it's not true to say that the City of York are not interested in any bid, because they're interested in North Yorkshire County Council's bid. So it's not true to say that. I would like to know myself. I would like to see North Yorkshire County Council's bid. I would like to compare it to us. I'm not saying that I would say it was better than ours or worse than ours or whatever. I would like to know why York why York think that North Yorkshire County Council's bid's all right. Why York are not interested in the East-West bid. I would like to know their opinion. We've not been asked their opinion. We've not been consulted. It would be interesting to know. It would be interesting to find out why there is this, why we're having this debate. Why are we having this debate? Because everybody wasn't consulted right from the start, right along, right through the process. Some people were consulted and some people weren't. And now we've got this where people want to know. I talked to a lot of councillors. I talked to Scarborough councillors. I talked to Hambleton councillors with my work on the national parks. So I know what Hambleton and Scarborough think. But I have no idea at all why York want the North Yorkshire County Council bid, not ours. I have no idea about that whatsoever. So yes, it would be interesting to have a presentation from the East-West, some of the councillors from the East-West, and the North Yorkshire County Council presentation would be interesting. And I would like to hear from York why they think the East-West wouldn't work. It would be interesting to know why they think it wouldn't work. Why are you frightened of that? Why can't we just talk to these people? Why do we keep excluding so many people? Thank you.
Councillor Duncan, Chair.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Repeatedly throughout this debate tonight, you have referred and others have referred to our bid. The terms our bid. So I think Councillor Allen's, it's on here. You've repeatedly referred to, and several other members have too, to our bid. The bid which our officers have prepared, our officers have worked on, that our Chief Executive has spent many hours providing expertise on children's services to put into the bid which our staff have supported via unison, almost unanimously, the bid which 21 members of this council supported to submit, our bid. And it may not be the Liberal bid, it may not be the bid that the Liberals support and that you personally support, Mr. Chairman, but it is the bid that the council has supported in its development. It is the bid which on the consultation portal right at the top lists a proposal by Ryedale District Council. And the fact that you are entertaining the concept, chance, possibility that we could even enter any comments that would challenge the bid which we have submitted, which we voted to submit by a council, plainly makes everybody who's been involved look very silly indeed, makes this council look very silly as well. And while there may well be a new chairman of Policy and Resources, the council and the composition of the council, the members of the council are still exactly the same people as they were when we submitted this bid to the government last year. And I think it's important just to reference some key points, which is that all groups were consulted. All groups were invited to briefings on this issue. Unfortunately, there was a grouping that didn't turn up, which was the Liberal group. But the Chief Executive held a briefing, several briefings on this matter, took on board lots of views both to the outline proposal and to the final submission. And I think it's wrong now to try and challenge and question the submission that we've put in. And clearly it would be a nonsense if we were to invite a Chief Executive of another district council to present to us and not to present our own, not to invite our own Chief Executive who has worked on the bid to present to us. That to me, I think is very dismissive to her as our Chief Executive and is very dismissive to the whole team that have worked on the bid as well. I think it's important to recognise the Liberal Party's position on this. First, it refused to take part in the briefings. Then it voted against submission of the bid at council. Those two strategies have failed. The third strategy now is to try and destroy it by stealth by inviting in a range of parties, other district councils, not ourselves, North Yorkshire County Council and the City of York Council. And while he may not agree with the submission, that submission was made and the will of council was 21 votes to submit. And while he may well hope that he can persuade or cajole or otherwise members of this council to change their minds from the position that they took way back at the submission point, and I recognise this wasn't about necessarily approving of the bid or preferring the bid, but it was actually to put it onto the table. Councillor Clark did not even want this bid to go forward, when actually people of all groupings, someone from every group on the council, at least one person voted from every group to submit. The only group that didn't was the Liberal group. So they didn't even want this to get onto the table for us to have the debate, to have the discussion, to submit our views. And I think he may well have thought he's been successful at getting members to change their minds on the council tax vote, leading them over a cliff on that one. He may well be trying to do the same on this, but actually our staff won't forgive us if we do that. The members of the public won't forgive us if we do that. And I won't. As an individual, I'll be very saddened to see that our bid would be anything other than supported wholeheartedly by this council, even if you may not fully agree with all the contents, even if you prefer another bid. It's our bid, the bid that we prepared, and we should get behind it. We do not need to have the briefings from the other parties. And one point I would make on a really practical level is everyone can read the bids, and every individual member of this council can submit their own views as an individual. And I think that will be a much better, more constructive way, rather than having a massive argument. And remember, Councillor Clark's coalition, they want to have consensus and unanimity across the council. The best thing in my mind is allow each individual to submit their views, and then we avoid having an argument, an almighty clash over this one. Each councillor makes their views known as an individual level. Do not try, Councillor Clark, in your new position as Chair of P&R, trying to represent the will of the Council, to block something just because you personally don't agree with it. Thank you.
Any more for any more?
Councillor Arnold, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It's nothing to do with you. I'd just like to question Councillor Frank. I said we should collude with the Conservatives. I have never ever said that in my life. I've always asked everybody to what their opinion is, and I've always done that until she went and joined the rest of the gang and Councillor Clark's gang. So I'm sorry, I've never said that at all.
Councillor Andrews, Chair. Councillor Andrews and Councillor Frank.
I'm going round a second time here, and I'm not going to do that many times because we've still got a lot to do. Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, apologies, Chair. It was just a point of order. Councillor Potter did attend the briefings, so the Liberal group were. Sorry, it's Councillor Graham. That he did attend the briefings. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Andrews. Don't trouble them with the facts. Anybody else?
Councillor Frank, Chair.
Councillor Frank.
Yeah, I'd just say that Councillor Arnold has a different recollection of things to what I have. But apart from that, you've said that we can submit our own views. As personally, we can submit our own views. Well, surely if we've had these presentations, we can make good, sound, solid views to submit. Surely if we've heard we've heard presentations from the other councils and the county council and the city of York, we can make good, sound views and put those views forward as individuals. Will make better representation of this council if we've had all those other presentations, so that we can weigh up the pros and cons and know what's what.
Any more before I reply to the debate?
No, Chair, there's no further raised hands.
Right. I think it to a large extent, it's spoken for itself. We're accused of not going to briefings, all of us. Now we get the fact that we were representative. My position, my own personal position, and I haven't put this on here because I am chair. I put this on here before I was chair. So on that basis, it's nothing to do with me being chairing this meeting. I endeavoured to hand over the chair, and Councillor Duncan didn't like it. So I've taken the chair back. Nobody is saying that we shouldn't have submitted a bid. But, and why we voted against it as a Liberal group, was because we wanted to contribute to that bid. Not just be told what was happening. And when you get to look at the first part of the bid, see if your memory fits in with Councillor Arnold or Councillor Frank. But I believe that there was a meeting that was not just councillors, but included Conservatives, non-councillors, members of Ryedale First, all together, all getting a briefing as to what was in the bid when none of the rest of the council knew about it. I'm sure that meeting never happened. And as for me having made up my mind, I find that a fascinating concept, particularly when people are telling me what my mind is. And at some point I shall write it down on a piece of paper and somebody can have a look at it. But having been through 3 of these local government reorganisations, nothing is decided until everything is decided. And there is nothing to stop a council or an individual or an organisation or a business taking the best out of 2 of the bits of the bids, putting them together and saying, why don't we do this? And because we agreed to put in a bid, that has now translated to we will force York to do what York doesn't want to do. And I'm not convinced that that is a formula for going forward. We haven't had a presentation from North Yorkshire. And my criticism of North Yorkshire this time, and when North Yorkshire's previous bid was there, that it didn't delegate down to the district representatives on that council to decide, excuse me, local issues, planning, housing, etc. And all this motion is doing is asking that we look at everything that's on the table now, not debate how it's got on the table or whether we wanted it on the table, etc., but look at what is on the table in front of everybody, discuss it, and see if there's a way forward. There may not be. By the sound of tonight, there won't be. Because some people are blindly committed to going forward with what we put in. No, we never voted on it, and we certainly didn't contribute to what was going in, not in a democratic meeting. All we did was agree to spending up to 49,000 on putting in a second bid and giving it to the chief executive to submit that bid. That is not us agreeing with it or disagreeing with it. It's just agreeing that there will be a bid. And many of the North Yorkshire councillors and the district councillors on other districts and boroughs throughout North Yorkshire, and many of them voted for both bids to go in, so that we collectively, all the organisations I listed at the beginning, had an opportunity to debate what the options were. And this council, if any of these options go ahead, will not exist as a council. So it might not be a bad idea as representatives of the public if we are better educated and discuss what we've got in front of us. But I suggest that we now go to the vote and that we proceed in the lines of the wording here, which means that we get people to come and talk to us from the district councils, that North Yorkshire County be invited and York be invited to deliver a presentation on how it views the proposals. And following that briefing, we call a further special meeting in accordance with Rule 27 to discuss the presentations and consider making a recommendation to be considered by full council. And full council can decide any of the options that Councillor Duncan had in front of us, or decide that we think it would be best for Ryedale if we did whatever. And that can include the East-West bid, could include the North Yorkshire bid, could include the East-West bid modified, could include the North Yorkshire bid amended, etc. So on that basis, I so move. And obviously we're going to have a vote on it.
Can I just ask before we vote on this that we can have, you asked for Councillor Duncan's questions in writing. Can we please have answers to his, can you answer his questions?
I will let Councillor, I have no record. I have no record.
You said you wanted.
I have no record. All I can say is what I said. What I said originally is that my discussions on this have been passing conversations with all sorts of people, dates and times I have no clue of.
Chair,
all I know is there was nothing in terms of negotiations or contributing to any bids or anything else at all. And I have not committed.
You asked Councillor Duncan.
Hang on. I have not committed myself to anything at all. I've asked for Councillor Duncan's question so that I've got it accurately to be given to me in writing, and then I will endeavour to answer it if I can.
So therefore, if there are questions that you have said you will endeavour to answer, then surely the vote should wait until we have the answers to the written questions.
The answers to what? That what one councillor might have said in conversation to somebody somewhere else.
That you have said he had to put those questions in writing, and you would answer them.
Because he wants an answer. If he doesn't want to put it in writing, and he doesn't want a proper answer, that's fine. He doesn't have to do it.
He didn't say he didn't want to put it in writing.
Well, that's
you
fine, then.
said he had to put it in writing.
I said so that I could give him a proper answer. Could he please put it in writing?
Then, therefore, would it not be right that we wait until you can answer those questions properly before we vote on this? It seems to me that you'd, rather than answer...
That is, Councillor Dockra, that is your view. We do not want to have another meeting when we come back and say, this is the date when I might have talked to blogs, but I didn't, etc.
So therefore,
there is nothing there of any substance.
Can we just establish going forward then that if
can we please take the vote on it?
Chair of P&R a question, the chair of P&R will now say put it in writing, and then you're not actually going to answer those questions. We're going to vote on something without the information. Is that how P&R is now going to move forward?
It may well be, if that is your view. Can we please take a vote on it?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Andrews.
Can I request a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, it will be, but yes.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Arnold.
Against.
Councillor Burr.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Delaney.
Against.
Councillor Dockra.
Against.
Councillor Duncan.
Against.
Councillor Frank. Councillor Frank. For.
Sorry. She not.
Sorry, Councillor Frank.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Against.
Councillor Ryedale.
For.
Thank you. That's 5 votes for and 5 against.
I will vote, casting vote in favour.
Thank you, Chair.
Do we want a 5-minute comfort break before we go on to the next item?
We will be finishing at 10, won't we? I think that's...
No, we're not, unless we adjourn it. Can I ask Simon what his view on that is?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. If you want the meeting to continue beyond, I think it would be about 10:10, because we have to take account of the short adjournment we had earlier, then you'd need to suspend the relevant procedure rule so that we could either consider particular items of business or continue with whatever remaining business is left on the agenda.
I propose that we suspend those standing orders so that we can get on with the meeting as far as we can get. And I hope they aren't as contentious as the one we've just had. Looking at them, I think they may not be.
Let's in that case, Mr. Chairman, let's press on, because I've been since 5:15 and I'm up at 5:15 again tomorrow, so I don't want to be sat here till midnight. So I would say, can we press on if possible, please?
So we suspend standing orders and press on.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I mean press on now.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're not going to end up halfway through an item or leave 2 bits left over. I propose that we suspend standing orders so that we can carry on.
I'll second
hopefully, I hope, looking at the rest, I don't see them as being as contentious. Some of them, I hope, are just agreed There's 2 planning ones to full council that probably don't need a lot of debate tonight, but let's see how they go.
Chair, just to advise, it would be Council Procedure Rule 8.1 that would need to be suspended.
And we need to do that now so that we don't shoot over the 10 past 10 range, do we not?
No.
You could do that now, Chair, or you could do it nearer to the time when the
let's do it now so that
close.
if we're in the middle of one, we can keep going. I propose that we suspend standing order, which? No. 8.1. 8.1.
I will second that.
Thank you, Joy. Do we need a debate, or can we just take a vote on it?
Just vote.
Just vote.
Just accept it as consent.
Are we agreed to carry on, or do we want to have a vote on it?
I think we should possibly vote.
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, let's vote.
Carry on.
Oh, sorry, you didn't ask my name.
Slow down, Joy.
Joy, you can't be that keen to carry on, can you?
Quite. I want to go quickly, but not that quick.
Come on, come on, come on.
Councillor Andrews.
4.
Councillor Arnold.
4.
Councillor Burr.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Delaney.
Against.
Councillor Dockra.
Against.
Councillor Duncan.
Abstain.
Councillor Frank.
4.
Councillor Graham.
Against.
Councillor Ryby.
4.
That's 6 votes for, 3 against, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, everybody. Let's keep moving. Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. The next report, item 11, is a procedural requirement, Chairman, and a recommendation to Council. I hope it's not contentious, and is recommending from this committee to Council that members agree the appended Ryedale local plan review call for sites consultation material, which is on pages 47 to 50 of the agenda, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Fine. I have questions that are not necessary, I think would be the best way of viewing it. So on that basis, can I move that we do the recommendations on page 41, 2.1, little 1. I'm a little nervous where there's no little 2 to go with it. Is there a reason for that?
No, Chairman, not really.
Right, okay. Sorry, but I've developed a slight nervous twitch, as it were, and a little 1 implies there might have been a little 2, but if there isn't, we can carry on without that. I've moved it. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
I didn't catch who that was.
Lindsay.
Lovely. Anybody wishing to speak on it?
Councillor Andrews, Chair.
Joy.
It was just a comment, page 47 of the draft site submission form template, the sort of second to last paragraph, the penultimate paragraph, we will be relying where possible on using email as the sole means of communication. But then obviously goes into it isn't the sole means. I just wondered if we could word that differently, just because it doesn't make sense to me. But that was the only sort of thing that really.
That was really
maybe use the word as the preferred means of communication, because if you're saying it's the sole means, but then there is other means, that was the only sort of thing I had with it being a public document. That was all.
That was really a question which I will take now so that we can get it out of the way. Gary, is there an answer to that?
Chairman, I just think it's in the language. If sole was used, instead of using the word sole, if you use the main means of communication, it's just that historically these call for science documents came in paper, and there are thousands of them, so it's very difficult to handle. So that's the aim of all this process.
But if we could have, can we amend that to main or usual or something like that?
If you're happy to agree that amendment, Chairman, we'll deal with it.
Does anybody want to disagree with that, or can we just ask the officers to amend it?
There's no raised hands, Chair.
Right, take your red pen out, Gary, change that. And the other one, while you're there, on a similar basis, it says under significant risks that members there are no significant risks that members need to be aware of. What about the ones we don't need to be aware of? Or is that something, again, in the same sort of wording game?
Yes, Chairman, it's just in the language.
Right, okay, I'll forget that. Anybody else got anything they want to say or add to that?
No, Chair.
No. It's been moved and it's been seconded. There's nobody wishing to speak. Can I take it that we're going to approve it on that basis? Anybody wanting a vote? Give people a chance to put hands up and whatever.
No indication of that, Chair. No,
no indication at all?
No.
In which case, forever hold your peace, etc. Right. I haven't even got to turning the massive pages over to read the next one. Statement of community involvement. The floor is yours again, Gary.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, we already have a statement of community involvement, but it's somewhat long in the tooth. And as you can imagine, a document like that does need to be updated. We need to update it in accordance with the review of the local plan. It's a procedural document, but it's an unusual document insofar as it covers both not just how we consult on policy documents, but also on planning applications as well. And so I hope members have sort of picked that up out of the report, Chairman, which is as it is. We haven't really made any great changes to the way that we would consult on planning applications, Chairman, but there is more of an emphasis of, again, using electronic means of consultation across the board. So again, it's bringing the document up to date really more than anything else. But it is a procedural document, Chairman. We do need it to sort of evidence our plan, and it's one of those things that would be examined as part of the soundness process.
I've got the same stupid thing under the recommendations. I take it you've just got into the habit of going 2.1 little 1. And,
yes, Chairman.
Yeah, right, fine, good, that's that dealt with. Is there anybody else got anything to add or change? Any questions, first of all?
There's no raised hands, Chair.
No questions. Anybody
No,
wish
Chair.
to make any comments on it?
No, Chair, no raised hands.
No raised hands. On that basis, do we need to take a named vote on it, or can we pass it by affirmation? Anybody wanting to take a vote on it?
No, Chair, no indication of that.
Lovely. Can I apologise to you, Gary? I would have moved those items earlier if I'd known the previous item was going to be so contentious.
Thank you, Chairman.
Because sitting through the previous item may not have been good for your health or anything else, I suspect. Right. The next item is item 13 and moving into exempt, but I want to do the cattle market and urgent business next. Is there anybody else got anything else that they wish to be considered under urgent business? Right. In which case, can I move that we set up a cattle working party? And my doodled thoughts on it are that we have 2 Conservatives, 1 Ryedale First, 1 Ryedale Independent, 2 Independents, and 2 Liberals on it. And have the officers had chance to have a think about whether or not we can cope with, not whether we can cope with it, but how we would cope with it, etc. I'm getting an awful lot of silences.
Chair, excuse me, just to come in with an officer view, I think the thing I'd need to check with colleagues is around capacity to do the work that goes into the working party meetings and follow up from them. Certainly from a corporate governance perspective, servicing the actual meetings and doing the agendas and the minutes, there are some capacity issues at the moment. We've got elections coming up and a busy meeting schedule, as well as the other work in the department, so that would be a potential concern. But my colleague Philip Spur, it would be his area which are actually involved in the work around the livestock market, so he may wish to comment as well.
Have you any comments, Philip?
Yeah, very, very briefly, Chair, if I can. Thanks for the invitation, Simon. I think my concerns will probably, Chair, mirror the concerns that Simon's outlined. I guess if we're moving this forward, the work would fall predominantly to the economic development team. Yeah. And certainly at this moment in time, with the ongoing COVID emergency and with preparatory work as we move out of COVID, the team is, I would actually say in all honesty, beyond capacity at the moment. So we do have a very full work programme. We've got an agreed list of priorities. So if we were to actually move forward, work on the cattle market, there would be inevitable consequences that some other areas of activity would have to suffer, would have to be deprioritised, would have to, at the very least, wait and not be progressed at the moment. So, yeah, very similar capacity issues to Simon. And as I say, I think the team is more than overstretched at this moment in time.
Can I suggest, and I look in the direction of Councillor Arnold at this point, can I suggest that some of the work could be done by members, probably working as a questionable working party, as it were, without too much officer support, and that they could get some work done before we involve officers coming into it in, the second meeting or the third meeting or whatever. I wonder if that is a route through, because I don't want this one to disappear again and again and again. But on the other hand, I know that we've had from here 2.5 late reports, one of which impressed me immensely was the written verbal report. And it's just a matter of time, but I don't want it to disappear from happening, but I want to see if we can work it so that there's very little impact on the officers, certainly in the early weeks. Is that workable, do you think? If
Can I come back to you, John?
Yes, please do.
Well, you and I have got all the paperwork.
Well, I've got it the wrong size for me to read now, but that's not undoable, I wouldn't have thought.
I've got all the paperwork, and I think if we formed a working group, the first thing to do would be to let the working group read all the paperwork that we've got going back over the years, and then see where we go from there. Do you agree with that?
I think that you and I, particularly with you having the paperwork, because I have trouble even finding paperwork now, let alone reading it, right? And you bring it to me or I meet up with you, and then we ask if they can produce larger print copies for me, which can I thank the officers for the large print things I've had over the last few months. The service has been impressive, to say the least. And I can get that into large print copies.
Would I
we print off copies of what we've got otherwise, and you let me have a spare copy so that I can get a larger print copy done. I think we could have a couple of discussions and move it on with little or no officer support to start off with.
That's what I agree, but I'm quite happy if I can. I'm quite happy to go into the offices and do the printing to print off how many sets of paper.
Even better. So if your group is appointed by you,
as well,
to be the Ryedale Independent representative, I think we can make it work with a little bit of cooperation from officers rather than work from officers.
Billy?
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duncan.
So I just wanted to indicate I was wanting to speak. I'm happy to wait if you've got something else you want to say.
Please do, Steve.
It was just to say, Mr. Chairman, that I am supportive of establishing a livestock market working party. I'm happy with that. What I'm not happy with is obviously as a group leader, I've had no notice of the intention to establish this grouping. I've had no opportunity to speak to my group to establish the right members to be on there. Right. And also, so that's one issue. So I wouldn't want to be proposing people to sit on that group.
No, that's fine. We can work our way round that comfortably.
And what I would also want to say is, I heard you mention a suggestion of the membership that might make up that working party. Now, how working parties have operated in the past, with the exception of the Grants Working Party, which is more like in effect, standing subcommittee. Working parties have been established to deal with particular sort of one-off issues. We had the car parking, we had the Milton Rooms. Now, on all of those ones, I think the Milton Rooms one was established on who has an interest and expertise and wants to share them, and therefore please come and join, not looking at which particular groups people were from. And then we had the car parking one, which was, well, let's try and have every group represented, irrespective of sizes of political groupings. Then we have the local plan working party, where the chair of P&R is obviously there, the chair of planning is there, and then there is one representative from each group. So every group has a chance to be on there. Now, in what you mentioned, Councillor Clark, in terms of trying to be fair here, what you mentioned in terms of your suggestions, I didn't hear you mention the Liberal Democrats. Obviously, they're a group of two, and while they're not represented on P&R, they are still.
I could happily put them on there. The only reason I went down that, I think I copied one of the working parties we had for this, and I can't remember which one it was. You may recognise it. Two Conservatives, one Ryedale Independents, one Ryedale First, two Independents, two Liberals, and one Liberal Democrat.
Yeah, was
copied from somewhere.
Well, I don't know where you've copied that from, Mr. Chairman, with respect, because
no, well, I don't. So
clearly, if you're trying to, you've got a choice. We've got a choice to make as a committee, which is we either have a working party that has members on it who are interested, and obviously you need to have a reasonable cap, but you have people. And personally, I'm not interested in sitting on that. I've got other things that I want to do. I think it's best to leave to others. But clearly, I may have only one person or two people from my group who might want to take part. And there are others that might have expertise. You may have. So you either do it where you just take interested people within reason, and broadly sort of proportional across the council, or have representation from all the groups.
This is what I was trying to do. Yep.
Or you try and do it where it is strictly proportional.
No, I wasn't trying to do that.
Well, at the moment, Councillor Clark, you're doing neither of those two options.
I was trying to get a broad coverage, and rather than put one person on from each group right down, I acknowledged the size of your group by putting two on.
Yeah, but with the greatest...
Hang on. I was going to suggest the numbers there, and I'm wondering if a wording might bridge it by going up to.
Well, what I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, is clearly if you're trying to be in any way resembling proportionality, which working parties don't have to be, I recognise that, but you must recognise that a grouping of 11, which the Conservative group are, is not a grouping of 5, which you as a Liberal group are. And I know you were striving towards unanimity or striving towards non-casting votes in terms of decisions. But if you're going to do that by gerrymandering the proportionality...
No, I wasn't going to try to do any gerrymandering. If you think that you have 3 members of your group who would like to be on it, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
What I'm saying, Councillor,
and I think the wording should be that we call for, and I'll go down the list again, but I won't read it all out, of those people, right? And if anybody wants to come along extra, they would be there but not have a vote. And I would hope that we didn't have many votes, if any, on it. But we may have the odd one.
And what I was saying,
but they wouldn't be binding votes, they'd only be recommending votes to P&R.
What I was saying, Councillor Clark, with respect to you as chairman, is we either do two things. We either say who is interested in the livestock market and wants to see us succeed, and we open up the membership to those individuals, or we say we want to have a representative of each group equally, or we try and get some basis of proportionality. What we don't do is try to equate a group of 11 councillors with two groups of 5 and give them the same number of representatives. You must agree that whether it's your intention, it does not look democratic.
I've said yes. Keane, I've said yes.
So my wider point,
I agree with you. What do you want to? How do you want to change it?
What I wanted to say, what I would be happy with, if you're looking to seek to get consensus, is that we decide this evening that we establish a livestock marking working party.
Yep.
But I would not feel comfortable at this stage, because I've not had a chance to speak to my group to establish who might want to be on it, who might have the expertise to be on it. I wouldn't want to determine how many from each group, whether we have a cap from each group, who does it or whatever. We agree in principle to the establishment of a livestock market working party, and it sounds like you are open, Mr. Chairman, to working with the officers and with Steve to try and find a way forward that works for them and works for you.
That is what I'm saying. And I've altered the 2 Conservatives on my draft list here to 3, right? And if you find you have more than 3, and I've thought of the word, it's provisionally. Right?
What I'm saying is,
if you find that you have more than 3, I don't have a problem. Are you suggesting that we have 4? I just was trying to stop it becoming half the council.
Can I assist, Chair?
Yes,
just
please do, Sam.
Obviously, we'd need to appoint named members to the working party as well, which it sounds doubtful whether we're in a position to do that tonight.
Can we not have representatives of parties, and that will enable Councillor Duncan to go back to his party and say, we've got at least 3 representatives, but we don't have to send 3 who would like to be involved.
We need to appoint the named members, and I know at the next scheduled meeting of Policy and Resources, we're due to reappoint working parties and subcommittees anyway, so there could be an opportunity to pick up appointing named members to a working party at that stage. That's in late May.
That's a mere 2 months away, and I want to get something happening before then. What would you be happy with, Keane?
You muted, Keane.
I'll be happy with, in principle, Mr. Chairman, with you establishing a livestock market working party with no specifications about membership and groupings and various other things. And I think if there's paperwork to be distributed, members can read it, members can work on it. You can have chats with members and discussions with each group with a view to formalising that working party. I mean, there's nothing stopping members having a discussion between themselves or whatever it might be in the meantime to establish what it might want to do, etc. But what I am not comfortable with, even though I do understand your frustrations on the issue of not reaching progress that you might like to have seen, what I wouldn't want to do is to be forced down a track of appointing a working party that might not be the right people. I just won't feel comfortable doing that. So I don't want to go down that track.
This is why I was suggesting that we set it up as 3 Conservatives, 1 Ryedale Independent, one Ryedale First, and I'm quite happy if it's 1 Independent and 1 Liberal. I'm not wanting to make the thing out of proportion. I just want to get it going.
But you can't get it going because we can't appoint this evening members of the working party.
We can have 3 representatives of the Conservatives. We can decide that tonight.
But you've just heard from Simon, Mr. Chairman. With the greatest of respect, I'm not trying to take over here, but you've just heard from Simon that the working party can't meet until it's appointed named members. And clearly, we're not in a position this evening to appoint named members to the working party. So if members wanted to meet informally, perhaps at some form of briefing or perhaps information to be circulated.
This may be it, but I am not. When's the next meeting of P&R, Simon?
I think, Chair, from off the top of my head, it's about the 27th of May. It's at the end of May because the final financial outturn report comes.
Yeah. The 27th of May is a long way away to be setting it up. and I'm suggesting that, where does it say, Simon, we can't have a working party with representatives from political groups?
Can I come in? Can I come in?
Just a second, I want to hear from Simon first and then Steve, then shout at me, Steve.
Oh, well, good at that.
Because the working party's an advisory body created by the committee, to make recommendations.
Yeah, so the committee can suggest. Can the committee say we would like 3 Conservatives on this, etc.
We then need to bring those nominations back, and usually terms of reference are approved as well for a working party, so we have a written remit.
Yep. Okay, so how do we get it going between now and that lot?
If you wanted to go down the route of establishing the working party, and there's obviously been the capacity issues raised, and I also just need to flag as well in terms of ability to drop in and out of Ryedale House to do things. There are health and safety restrictions in place as well that might limit that. But sort of establishing the principle of what you might want to do, and then allowing groups to look at that and maybe have some initial informal discussions and come back with a firmed up detailed proposal to the next meeting and names could be a way forward.
Yeah.
So we agreed to create a working party, right? And provisionally we have, and I think I'll go with the phrase "up to," so that enables you, Steve Keane, to go, I've got 3 Conservatives that want to be on it, and can it go to 4? And I'm quite happy to make it 4 down the track if you have, but there's no point in making it 4 if you've only got 2 people that want to go on it. Your comment, not mine, but I agree with it.
Councillor Clark, I don't want to interrupt again, but you obviously can't see the meeting, but there is a look on your group member's face, Councillor Andrews, which is seeming in disagreement with what you are suggesting, and I wanted to communicate that to you.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Keane. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just finding it a bit frustrating that we're not. I mean, I think everybody has a real will to establish a working party, and I just wish we could get to some sort of conclusion. If we need named people, it's not going to happen tonight because everybody's got to go back to their groups to find out who is really genuinely interested in getting this off the ground. So I don't know. I just don't think if we're not going to agree on the representation, it might be a case of, I can't remember whether it was Simon suggested it, about getting the information out to all members so that they can get the background information and everything and read it and get it up and running
by some point in June.
Can I come in again yet?
Yes, please do, Steve.
I think we ought to just say we want 9 members, and I don't think it should be political. I think it should be anybody who's interested. Doesn't matter what party they're from. As long as
I'm not unhappy with that. What I'm not wanting to do, I'm wanting to make sure that everybody feels that they're welcome to it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get too big, we're not going to get anywhere, are we?
No, that was my other concern. So you're saying up to 9 members, are you?
Yeah.
That'll be a headache for me down the track when we find 10 people who are wanting to do it, but I'm sure we'll cope with it.
Well, we can manage, but 9's a sort of...
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a working party should be 5, but on the political balance we've got now, I think 5 is going to be very tricky on anything.
Well, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking
No, I know you're not, but that's the world. That is the world we're in. We've had a flavour of it tonight.
We've got over that. Yeah. So.
Right. So we want to create a working party, right?
With up to 9 members, and then we'll have a discussion.
We create a cross-party.
Yeah.
Working party with up to 9 members.
Yeah.
Drawn from nominated people.
Yeah.
From the political groups. Right? That's what it will be. And initially, work to commence looking at existing paperwork and potential ways forward.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Right? Now, can we make that fly? In other words, if we can get the paper copies done, and that might be a case of you taking your copy and going into the local printers or whatever, Steve.
Well, we'll work that one out.
But I think we can work that one out.
Yeah.
Can we therefore ask for nominations for this working party from all groups? How does that suit with you, King?
I mean, to be honest, Mr. Chairman, I don't like the way this has been done. I would like to say to you, imagine if I was chairman of Policy and Resources and I had scheduled an item under urgent business to establish a working party with no written terms of reference, no officer report, no members appointed. We've booked a figure of 9, and we're now trying to establish it when it can't actually meet formally because it can't meet till we've appointed named members. I think you would be absolutely incandescent if I'd have suggested that.
Right.
I'm not going to stand in the way.
Let me tell you about my incandescence, as you've just said I might be incandescent. I might be incandescent if it was a policy of council to do the cattle market, and under your leadership, nothing had happened. But I'm not incandescent. I'm trying to find a way forward.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to stand in the way of it, but I don't think it's a good start for a cross-party
No, it's not a good start to have done nothing for 2. It's not a good start to have done nothing for. The start has been on your watch, and nothing's happened. So let me try proposing that we create a cattle market working party with up to 9 members and call for nominations from the political groups. The initial work to be carried out by members, some of whom have the original paperwork. Copies to be made available to those that want as soon as possible. How does that lot sound, Simon?
We need that. You need to have a terms of reference.
Doesn't that exclude members that are relatively new?
Sorry, Claire, why would that be?
Because we haven't had the paperwork going.
No, I'm suggesting that those who've got the paperwork, which is mostly Steve, right, circulate copies of the paperwork to anyone who wants it.
We'll do that. Might have to go to that.
And through your groups, we've said call upon the groups to express an interest. Can you act, because you can see, Steve, can you act as a secretarial sort of hub for this lot? In other words, contact Councillor Arnold. We won't put this in the wording of it, but contact Councillor Arnold saying, can I have a copy of the paperwork, please?
I'm happy with that, John, as long as you send me what you've just written down.
Yeah, I've got to get Simon to write it down in a minute. Or we agree the wording after the meeting, I don't care. But we've got up to 9. Let me start again. We've got up to 9, right, groups to nominate. So that means Keane can go back to his group and say who'd like to be on it. Groups to nominate, and the paperwork to be produced
by me.
and circulated by those already in receipt of papers. That's you, Steve, but it's not naming you and not leaving you carrying the can.
Tell Simon I'll ring him up and discuss it.
Sorry?
Simon know that I'll ring him up and discuss what I'm going to do with it and ask what...
We'll sort it out.
Yeah.
How does that sit with you, Simon? Is that doable?
I think we'd obviously bring back a report at the next meeting to sort
yes,
out the named nominees and the terms of reference in writing.
Yes,
so
yes,
that's just
exactly. But if we're not going to have much officer support, that's the negative way of looking at it. The positive way is if we're going to do a fair amount without using scarce officer resources. Nodding in Philip's direction. We can get some work done and get the politicians to work out where they are on this lot before we trouble the administration.
I think that would stand as an in-principle decision tonight with details for a subsequent meeting. And obviously we'd need to look at resourcing and capacity issues on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that. Can you leave the wording of that with Steve, Simon and myself to tidy that? Are you happy with that, Keane? I mean, not happy with it. I'm not happy with it. Nobody's happy with it.
I'm not happy with it at all, and I don't believe in a couple of members leaving a committee to work up the wording of something that were allegedly agreed at the meeting. But if that's the track that we're going to go down, and that's the only way to get past this point at 10:15, then I'm happy to leave with it. But it's not the way that I believe business should be done.
No, and neither is my ideal thing. I would have liked this on the agenda 3 weeks ago, but we couldn't. Right.
Can we move on now, Chair?
Can we do that, Simon?
We've got a note of the wording proposed, so we can include that in the minutes.
We'll check that wording out with you, me and Steve to make sure that we know where we're at, because that's putting some work onto Steve, but I think we can do it, and that reduces the work done by, any requirement if possible, or limit the requirement of officer resources. Right. Is that agreed?
Are we voting on this, or is it just been agreed?
We can vote on it if you want to do, but the wording will have to be, Simon, I think you put the wording as the detail of the exact wording to be agreed between the officers and the chair of the committee, but I won't agree anything, Steve, unless I've heard from and I get your agreement on it.
No, neither will I, John. Let's move on, shall we?
Are you happy with that, Simon? Is somebody wanting to take a vote on it?
No, carry on.
I hear you're not. I heard a voice saying they did. Was somebody wanting a vote?
No, not for me, Chair.
No?
No indication, Chair, no.
No indication. Right, sorry, I misheard. Maybe the hearing's packing up. Right, can I move exempt?
Yeah, I agree.
Is that you seconding it, Steve?
I am.
That's your proper job in life.
It is.
Right, well, it is. Right, good. Do we need to take a vote? Are we all in favour of moving into exempt?
There's no objections, Chair.
I take that to mean that we're happy with moving into exempt. Right.
Councillor, Chairman, I'll be leaving the meeting now for the next item, and then if somebody could get in touch with me to get back in the meeting, 15. Thank you.
I'll try and remember you, Joy, but if not, I'll ring you in the morning and say sorry, I forgot you.
Okay. Bye.
Right. Item 14. feel I ought to do. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Au revoir.